Hey guys, Eric Clary here, co-founder of Oranges Property Management and the team lead with the investment team at Remax Niagara. Today we want to talk about something that's becoming ever more important, and the topic really is becoming something I think a lot more people are faced with, deciding which route to go. So we definitely want to talk about this. Commercial versus residential, and not just commercial like a warehouse that's 10,000 square feet. There's a lot of people might not know. So 5 residential units or more is actually classified as commercial. So you can still be dealing in the residential space, but for guys like Johnson and lenders and banks, it's looked at as commercial lending. And I'm going to totally let him talk about all that. But first of all, let me introduce this guy. I'm here with Johnson Andrews from the Vine Group, who is our in-house mortgage specialist. This guy is going to very thoroughly speak about this topic because, some people have thrown in the towel. It's like, oh, my lender said I'm tapped out. I own 5 houses, or Meridian gave me as many as they'll take, and CIB's blah 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 blah. It doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean the towel's tossed in and you have what you have today is all you're ever going to have. There's a lot of other products and purchases, all handle the where's a good investment, what's going to work, what's going to scale, what's going to be profitable. And Johnson's going to put that red bow on it, which is the financing package. And he's going to rely on me. Like, we rely on each other a lot, right? Because I need to bring him something that brings in the rents to qualify on its own. And that might sound a little confusing right now, because when you get into commercial, it's really not dependent on you at all, being, your service debt, or do you need good credit and do you need to have a history? Of course. Do you need to have some assets to help you? Sure. But it really is, how does this asset perform on its own? The bank, he's going to give you that money based on how it performs on its own. And again, I don't want to intertwine because he's going to do a way better job explaining this than I am. So again, guys, big differences between buying a residential home, a duplex, a triplex, even a fourplex, and that being very dependent on you versus commercial lending. And again, we might touch on this video towards the end of the is investing in a commercial warehouse good? And I'll talk to you about what you need to look at in the onset, in the beginning, being who is going to be your tenant. A lot of people buy these warehouses and, I'm going to rent it. It's in the industrial space in Grimsby. It's in the industrial space in Toronto, blah, 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 blah. Who's your tenant going to be? If you're not thinking who you're going to rent to in the beginning, you've already shot yourself in the foot. And I strongly believe that. Mm-hmm. So again, without trying to cover 67 different points in a few minutes, I'm really going to let Johnson, at least right now, very in a simplified way, break down commercial financing and residential financing. I think we've done a lot of time talking about residential. I'll let him retouch on it a little bit, but go ahead, Johnson.
Yeah, so I think you broke down a lot of it, but the easiest way to think about it is with residential lending, the amount in which that you're going to be able to borrow is dependent heavily upon your income and then portions of the rental income that your portfolio commands. What it comes back to then is your debt to income ratios, and then based on that, the lender will decide how much they're willing to approve you for. And to me, what I've seen historically over the thousands and thousands of people that I've worked with is everyone has a ceiling at which that they qualify for when it comes to their personal debt load. And that typically comes sooner than you would think in the way that banks review applications. Now, historically, when people hit that ceiling, they tend to stop or not look at any other avenues in terms of real estate to make money. This to me is a short-sighted approach due to the fact that you can transition or graduate to the commercial space where the commercial lending is dependent entirely upon the building that you're buying. The easy way to think about it is that the lender is going to look at this building as a business, and would they want to lend money to this business based on the cash flows that it commands. Lenders do not care about the personal debt that you're holding, so this makes it much easier to qualify. And the reason why we say that people tend to graduate to this point is that more often than not, with a commercial transaction, the down payment requirements are a little bit higher. So we tend to usually refinance the residential portfolio to help facilitate the down payment on the commercial side of things. Now, that is someone that you could say is a true blue investor in terms of they've bought their primary residence, they've accumulated real estate investment properties on the residential side, and they don't qualify anymore. And they want to continue to grow that portfolio. But this is also something that can fit someone that's just looking to get into the investing space, that might have their primary residence and they needed to upsize and take on a lot of debt to accommodate their family, or they wanted that dream home in which they took on a lot of debt, where they might not qualify for residential investment properties outside of that. they can still now look to the commercial side to grow a real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
And that to me is the nice part about it, is as long as you have down payment and we find the right asset in terms of cash flow, financing is going to be available in the commercial space. And the even better thing in terms of when working with Eric and his expertise in terms of the BRRRR strategy, this is where you buy, you renovate, you rent it out, you refinance, and then you repeat. The BRRRR strategy is made for commercial financing and opportunities because the value of the property is entirely dependent upon the cash flow.
Yeah.
So with Eric by your side in terms of helping you find assets and improving them and commanding higher rents, that's where you really get true forced equity, because the higher the rent is, the higher the value of the property, the more financing we can do. Whereas sometimes on the residential side of things, you might have improved the rents, but the comparable beside you is someone sold under duress, and now the price per square foot doesn't give you a good comparable to do your refinance, right? So the commercial side does leave the door open to some very strong potential when it comes to the BRRRR strategy as well.
And honestly, the best part, something I love about commercial lending, and let's look at multiple residential units. Now, so many opinions are out the window. Like, well, I think this area is, it's literally, it's how well does this perform? And if you cannot get lending on it, it's a good indicator it's not a good investment. In the smaller residential, now I'm a professional, so whether you're buying a single family house, a duplex, triplex, I'm going to sell you the best product that commands good rents could be blah, blah, blah. But commercial eliminates a lot of those opinions, and it boils it right down to the numbers.
It's real math. It's real math at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Like, typically the mindset between commercial and residential investors is something that maybe the residential investor, as they graduate, like we like to say, when they've tapped out, it takes a little bit of a perspective change because they look at it still with an emotional attachment. On the commercial side, it's very black and white.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
In terms of the numbers, and it drives those decisions very easily for people.
And again, guys, I mean, as much as I would be lying to you if I said I'm a purely quantitative analysis type of investor, there is emotion involved in it for me as well. Do I like it? Do I something I want to hand down to my kids one day? Like there's those components that will never go away. But the beautiful thing about commercial is it really does just sort of isolate it and force you to really ask yourself the hard questions. You know, they're not going to give me the financing I need if it doesn't do this, A, B, and C. And he'll tell you it needs this or it needs that. And I will identify those things and we'll discuss them together. And that really does eliminate a lot of the noise. And, you know, as much as it might be a necessity for somebody who is tapped out on the personal side to have to go to this end, it doesn't have to be when you're tapped out. Like he mentioned, maybe you bought a big primary house and you can't qualify, but maybe you have a nice little house. You could go out and buy 2 or 3 different houses. You have a lot of money. You can jump right into the commercial game.
Yep.
And it doesn't, again, have to be a warehouse. Not that that's a bad investment. I know somebody who's built an entire life for themselves and their family generations for a long time off of buying land and warehouse and those sort of investments. That's a whole different game. But again, it's very straightforward. And it is something to think about. You've only got one roof, right? You can buy 10 houses and have 20 units. You got 10 roofs, 10 furnaces, 10. You might buy a building. You've got one of everything, right? Maybe you have a couple different furnaces in different areas, or maybe each unit, but you got one roof, one foundation, one address, right? So there are a lot of benefits to the commercial game as well. And my job is, again, is it ultimately going to be a good investment? Because just because it approves and qualifies for financing doesn't make it an amazing investment. It means, okay, the banks look at it and say this thing will support itself. So it's pretty much out of the gate. It's not a bad deal. Doesn't mean it's the best deal. And that's where Johnson and I, through communication and our sort of efforts and joint collaboration, will be able to say, you know what, this makes sense. Here's why. Here's the value add, right? You always want to have some sort of value add when looking at commercial. And I can promise you, he's going to want to see some value add as well, because a commercial deal isn't, you're good, see you in 10 years. It's what can we do? What can Eric and Johnson do over the next 1, 2, 3 years to really extract that much more out of this deal and make it perform that much better? And understanding the financing and understanding the value add propositions, understanding the areas and all these sort of things as one sort of encompassed picture is what we have dedicated our careers to doing for people just like you. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover. Again, commercial, when you think of it, think of commercial as 5 residential units or more, or think of it as legitimately zoned or purpose-built commercial space, which there's a demand for that. But again, who are you going to rent to? Because just because you have a big warehouse doesn't mean that Walmart's going to reach out to you for a lease. Maybe you don't have enough parking. Like, there's so many variables, and understanding what else is in the area. Is there a big retail chain that you've heard through the grapevine that's looking for space? And then you can buy something that's and literally put it on a platter. I have a client that I'm not going to mention their name, but they do a lot of deals with Dollarama all across the country, and they've built a relationship with the national sort of I would say director, maybe manager, whatever, and they literally I've done deals and looked in areas and continue to do more where they buy stuff knowing they're going to have a lease in place. And that's another thing to consider, right? You can buy real estate and have things lined up beforehand, right? So, I mean, that's a sweet spot. Doesn't always happen. I wouldn't set that as an expectation, but when you work with the right people, those are the type of results you can actually expect to achieve. So, guys, thank you so much. Hopefully we've done a good job here at explaining some of the differences. Anyone has any questions? Anyone that's had that annoying conversation with their mortgage agent, no offense, where you're tapped out and you got to hang up the hat, maybe that's a signal for you to really reach out to someone like myself and Johnson and begin that conversation, because at no point, if you're not ready, should you have to, quit investing.
There you go.
That's something we want to at least be able to explore and have that conversation with you guys. All right. Thank you so much for checking in with us today, and we look forward to speaking with you guys very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.